We lost a great one Monday night. Carl Reiner being remembered by so many over the last 24 hours for that iconic comedy career. 7 decades in TV and movies, theater. Of course, he was behind the Dick Van Dyke Show. Al Roker said one of his favorite interviews of all time was the sit-down he did with Carl Reiner a few years ago.
We're going to look back at that, too, this morning. He's also being celebrated for his enduring friendship with another legend, Mel Brooks, who shared a touching post on Twitter overnight. He wrote, "Carl was a giant, unmatched in his contributions to entertainment. Whether he wrote or performed or he was just your best friend, nobody could do it better. He'll be greatly missed." So
we'll spend some time this morning remembering Carl Reiner, but we start with our top story on this Wednesday morning, the coronavirus. Of course, for the 4th time in a week, U.S. cases have soared to a new daily record, more than 48,000 on Tuesday alone.
Record highs also reported in 8 states from coast to coast: Alaska, Arizona, California, Texas, Oklahoma, Idaho, South Carolina, and Georgia.
Meanwhile, it appears more help is on the way for struggling small businesses. Overnight, the Senate passed a surprise extension of a loan relief program just hours before it was set to expire. It does still need the approval of the House and President Trump, though.
We've got complete coverage this morning, including a new warning on the outbreak from Dr. Anthony Fauci. Let's get to NBC's Carrie Sanders. He's in Florida. Gets us started this morning. Hi, Carrie. Morning.
Well, good morning, Savannah. Long lines again here this morning to get tested for coronavirus. Folks began lining up here at 2 a.m. And health officials say if the trend continues, and they believe it will, 1 in 10 people who will be tested here today will test positive.
I think it's important to tell you and the American public that I'm very concerned because it could get very bad.
A dire warning from the nation's top infectious disease expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci, testifying Tuesday on Capitol Hill.
We are now having 40,000+ new cases a day. I would not be surprised if we go up to 100,000 a day if this does not turn around. And so I am very concerned.
Vice President Pence now urging Americans to wear masks.
We know how to slow the spread. Wear a mask whenever your state and local authorities say it's appropriate.
Nationwide COVID cases soaring. 28 states seeing an increase in the last 14 days. 45,000 new cases nationwide Tuesday. On Tuesday, Florida had its 4th highest number since the pandemic started, just over 6,000 new cases. The ages of those getting coronavirus dropping too. 19-year-old John Edwards among the many young people who are not afraid.
Are you worried?
Yes, I'm worried, but at the same time, it's like it seems unreal, basically.
The tri-state area no longer the epicenter, now telling residents from 16 states to stay away.
None of us want to go back through that hell. We've worked too hard to get here.
Still, New Jersey cautious, delaying indoor dining at restaurants. Massachusetts and New York now requiring visitors from most states to quarantine for 14 days. On the Delaware shore, the 4th of July will be dry. Beach bars now shut down. Since the pandemic began, close to 500 healthcare workers have died. 25-year-old Molly Dawson, an ICU nurse from Kentucky, airlifted to a bigger hospital in Nashville. Doctors tell her mother she may be on a ventilator for up to 6 weeks.
Your daughter's 25 years old. Did you anticipate this?
No, not at all. It's terrifying. I mean, I don't want anybody else to have to experience what we are. And I know it's going to happen.
Jacksonville is now requiring masks indoors, which means President Trump will have to decide when he makes his acceptance speech in August at the convention that's now moved to Jacksonville, whether he'll follow the rules and wear a mask. Savannah?
All right, Carrie, thank you.
The dramatic climb in new cases is perhaps most visible in California, where the number of infections is soaring. And in neighboring Arizona, ICU beds are quickly nearing capacity. Both states are now rolling back their reopenings as well. NBC national correspondent Miguel Almaguer is in Los Angeles for us. Miguel, good morning.
Craig, good morning. Nearly half of the confirmed COVID cases in California are right here in Los Angeles County. It's a staggering number of cases for just this immediate region. It's also a troubling sign for the state and the West as COVID cases surge.
After another record-breaking day of new coronavirus cases in California, some 230,000, the state has now hit another grim milestone, the death toll topping 6,000. Nearly half of those who know they are infected live in Los Angeles County, where hospitalizations are at record numbers.
I think we're all kind of looking at the numbers with trepidation and maybe even a little bit of a sense of dread.
In nearby Riverside County, 99% of ICUs hit capacity over the weekend.
In the ICU, we're doing everything we can, but we're not getting there. We're not saving our patients like we want to.
Facing a new wave of infections, California's governor is ordering beaches, piers, and bars closed before the holiday. Even more restrictions could be ordered today. With many still refusing to wear masks or keep their social distance, similar shutdowns have been ordered in Arizona. Even the start of in-person classes has been pushed back. Dr. Anthony Fauci suggesting pool testing could help reopen campuses. Instead of testing individuals, you could test a group to see if someone in that group has the virus.
If that test is negative, then you know those 10 people are all negative. So instead of utilizing 10 tests, you've utilized one test.
It comes as Texas experiences the highest single-day spike since the pandemic started. At least 17 states are now reversing or pausing planned reopenings. Dr. Brandon Bukowski never left the front lines.
We're not at the worst case scenario yet, but we will be.
This morning, bracing for the next wave as the COVID crisis takes a new toll every day.
The crisis in California and across the West is expected to worsen as testing increases, but it's hospitalization numbers that worry health officials the most. And for now, there is no indication those numbers will get better anytime soon. Savannah?
All right, Miguel, thank you. Let's turn now to virologist and NBC News medical contributor Dr. Joseph Fair. Dr. Fair, good morning. I'm sure you were watching Dr. Fauci's testimony yesterday saying that if things don't turn around, we could have 100,000 cases by very soon. At the same time, you have the CDC deputy director saying the other day, we're past that point. We're past the point of being able to control this. How do you see it?
Well, I don't think the two statements are mutually exclusive from one another. You know, what Dr. Fauci said, if we're following the trajectory that we are currently on and have been observing the past few weeks, we could very easily get to that number or maybe even surpass that number. And as far as what the CDC said in their own statement about not being able to control the virus, this goes back to something you and I spoke about earlier about this virus potentially and increasingly looking like it's becoming endemic to the United States, meaning that it's going to be here until we get a vaccine. All of the traditional measures that we would use to normally control a virus or eradicate it have not worked in the United States in particular for a variety of reasons. Thus, we have the numbers now to kind of make it, I won't say impossible to eradicate it using traditional means, but extremely difficult to do so. So, I mean, that sounds rather hopeless. What does that mean? You just give up or you just keep trying to do social distancing and the mask? I mean, I don't know where to even go with that. Is it giving up? Yeah. No, absolutely not giving up. And, you know, I am not ready to throw in the towel. And there are still things that we can do to get through this until we either have better therapeutics or a better vaccine. And, you know, I'll go back to something that we have talked about really since February or March, which is testing. There needs to be a breakthrough in testing to make it very easy, something preferably saliva-based where you don't have to poke someone several times per day. Testing will allow us to know where we need to focus our energies the most. It will allow us to do that isolation and contact tracing that Dr. Fauci said we need to do so aggressively. We need to recruit a contact tracing corps and, you know, think about census takers. It would be the same kind of thing. You don't need to be a doctor to do contact tracing. So if we did all of those things starting now, and I emphasize the earlier we start, the quicker this will be over. If we did all of those things now, we still have an opportunity to control the virus and reduce it greatly. And what about masks? Because we saw yesterday a lot of top Republicans, Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy, Lamar Alexander coming out and basically saying, come on, everybody, just wear a mask. Will it make a difference? Could it really stem the tide? You know, I think what confuses people the most about the mask has been the conflicting guidance. And I myself even gave some of that guidance in the beginning because I was following what we knew from SARS. And that's what those guidance, the original guidance was based on. Overwhelmingly, since this outbreak has started, we have seen that masks both aid in the prevention of the disease and, to a much more limited extent, catching the disease yourself. So masks seem to be the key public health intervention that we can use, in addition to social distancing, of course. But masks seem to be the key intervention that we can use to prevent the spread of the virus further.
All right, Dr. Fair, good to get your perspective as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Savannah.
Also this morning, the Trump administration is once again defending its handling of reports that Russia offered bounties for killing U.S. troops in Afghanistan. But critics on Capitol Hill are demanding new answers. NBC's White House correspondent Kristen Welker is following this story for us. Kristen, good morning.
Hi, Craig. Good morning to you. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are stepping up their calls for answers. In just hours, the White House will brief top congressional leaders on the Russia bounty matter. The White House says the president has now been briefed himself, but Democrats are blasting the response here, calling it inexcusable and weak. This morning, President Trump is facing growing pressure from Capitol Hill to respond to mounting reports suggesting Russia offered cash bounties to the Taliban for killing U.S. troops in Afghanistan. With administration officials set to brief congressional leaders of both parties today, House Democrats expressed frustration with the White House briefing they received Tuesday.
The right people to give the briefing really were not in the room. We need to hear from the heads of the intelligence agencies about how they assess the allegations that have been made publicly.
The president has insisted he was not initially told about the intelligence, but NBC News has confirmed White House officials became aware of the reports as early as 2019. The White House press secretary insisted the president has now been briefed on the matter, but wasn't initially because she said there was no consensus over the intelligence. And when pressed whether he reads his presidential daily brief, responded.
The president does read, and he also consumes intelligence verbally. This president, I'll tell you, is the most informed person on planet Earth when it comes to the threats that we face.
Former Vice President Joe Biden lacing into the president.
If he was briefed and nothing was done about this, that's a dereliction of duty.
And among those asking for answers this morning, Eric Hendricks, the father of Corporal Robert Hendricks, who was among 3 Marines killed in a car bomb in Afghanistan last April. That incident now under scrutiny by U.S. intelligence officials as potentially part of the Russian bounty payments, according to multiple reports, but not confirmed by NBC News. Hendricks told NBC News in a telephone interview, quote, "It would break my heart if the reports were true," and added no one from the Trump administration has reached out to his family since the Russia revelations, and he has yet to hear from President Trump since his son died. Why hasn't anyone called me? Hendricks asked. An anti-Trump conservative group, the Lincoln Project, is targeting the president in this new ad with an ex-Navy SEAL calling him unfit for office.
Mr. Trump, you're either a coward who can't stand up to an ex-KGB goon or you're complicit. Which is it?
Now, as for Eric Hendricks, the father of the late Corporal Robert Hendricks, he says he does not vote but leans toward supporting President Trump and is hopeful there can be answers soon. Meanwhile, many Republican lawmakers are rallying around the president, stressing that the intelligence was not verified. Still, experts in the matter say it's not unusual for officials to disagree on intelligence assessments. And Craig, as we have been on the air, the president tweeting just moments ago, calling this whole thing, quote, just another hoax. Craig.
Kristen, while I have you here, there's some other headlines from Joe Biden's briefing on Tuesday, the former vice president's first briefing in months. He was asked if he'd been tested for cognitive decline. What happened there?
That's right, Craig. It was notable when Joe Biden was asked by a reporter about whether he has been tested, as you say, for cognitive decline. Here's that headline-making exchange. Take a look.
Have you been tested for some degree of cognitive decline?
I've been tested and I'm constantly tested. Look, all I got to do is watch me, and I can hardly wait to compare my cognitive capability to the cognitive capability of the man I'm running against.
So there you have it. Now, Biden, who is 77, has come under scrutiny for at times stumbling or forgetting facts on the campaign trail. President Trump is 74 years old and has also been asked about his physical and cognitive health. The White House doctor recently weighed in on that, saying the president remains healthy.
Craig.
All right. Kristen Walker from the White House this morning. Kristen, thank you.
Well, we have a lot more to get to, including, as mentioned, those new tributes that are pouring in for comedy legend Carl Reiner. He died Monday night at the age of 98. He was an icon. He made the world laugh for 7 decades. NBC's Ann Thompson now looking back at Carl Reiner's prolific career.
What are you doing? What? What are you doing? I was just sitting. Where? Right here. Where? At your table. Where at my table? Right here. Where? In the chair. What chair? This chair. Whose chair? Your chair.
Carl Reiner knew how to make America laugh. As Sid Caesar's straight man in the 50s.
Get out, and get out fast.
Dick Van Dyke's egotistical boss in the 60s.
We said that I like you so much better without your,
And George Clooney's partner in crime in the Ocean's 11 series. This century, well into his 80s. This morning, Clooney saying his was a life well lived, and we're all the better for it.
If you stop, then they put you away.
Yet it was his off-camera work that made the Bronx-born Reiner legendary, recording the 2,000-year-old man comedy albums with Mel Brooks.
You knew Joan of Arc.
I went with her, dummy. I went with her.
Have you ever seen this one?
Directing George Burns as God.
He hates these cans!
Capturing Steve Martin's genius on film.
The Dick Van Dyke Show.
And creating the TV show that Reiner said was his best work. Reiner won 7 Emmys for writing and producing The Dick Van Dyke Show. The Smithsonian asked for his typewriter.
He is my mentor and my idol.
Van Dyke remembering his idol's scripts as always having something to say about us.
Comedy is always about what's happening in your life and the world, and we are the same.
Active and engaged on social media to the end, just last week, Reiner mused about his legacy in dispatches from quarantine.
The only thing that really matters in life is your progeny.
Married to Estelle for nearly 65 years, they had 3 children, Lucas, Annie, and Rob, the actor and director, tweeting, "My heart is hurting. He was my guiding light. A light lit by laughter."
There's nothing better than getting a laugh.
And Carl Reiner gave us so many. Ann Thompson, NBC News.
Wow.
You know, Al does these stories from time to time with living legends, and he sat down with Carl Reiner, and I know it was one of his favorite, and he's going to share a little bit of that with us a little bit later on, and William Shatner is going to be along, and it's just, you know, gosh, he was really one of a kind, a true original.
A life well lived, to say the least. Roker's going to break his vacation, in fact, to come back and share that. Dylan Dreyer is on duty for Al. Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you guys, too. And, you know, you mentioned it earlier. We're talking about the heat, and so many people, especially down across Texas and the Southern Plains, will be dealing with exceptional heat. Heat advisories are in effect because of that for 22 million people. It's not just the heat, it's the humidity. You hear us say that all the time. Temperatures will be well up into the 90s. It'll feel like we're well above 100 degrees, and that heat will continue as we go through the next several days with really no break in sight.